It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Tuesday edition of the show. Thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. And, of course, big shout out to everybody listening out there as well on the RealAg Radio podcast. This is not the only podcast that Real Agriculture produces. We've got a Mind Your Farm Business podcast. Stay up to date on the latest in farm management. There's a lot of topics in that one. The most recent episode, we've got a conversation with Ted Oakley of Oxbow Advisors out of Austin, Texas, talking about how to make sure your kids don't actually screw up the whole money thing and how to get them to understand money and respect money and how to deal with wealth that you've created through your hard work. So it's a very fascinating discussion. We've got another one coming out very soon that has to do with how to scale your farm business. That's going to be interesting too, with Evan Shout of Maverick Ag, the agronomists, which is a great weekly email that goes out, obviously talking about the latest episode of the agronomist, making sure that you sign up for those CCA credits for watching the show. And on top of that, a whole bunch of other agronomic content that is very pertinent to a very wide geography. So really encourage you to check out both of those. You can do that by going to realagriculture.com, subscribe to get the emails, and then we've got the podcasts of those brands as well. So don't miss out on any of it. Okay, that's enough there. Hey, if you have any feedback on today's show, we'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also find Real Agriculture across all the different social media platforms. You're also more than welcome to call the Real Ag feedback line. Now, that number is 855-776-6147. So what is on today's show, you ask? Well, I'll tell you. Mike Weddel, who is the head of Stratus Ag Research, he's going to be joining us to talk about some new data that they have pulled out of Canada and the U.S. relative to how farmers feel about some of the trade issues that are going on and how it's impacting them. So we'll see. Is farmers in one country more concerned than the other? We'll find out from Mike today here on the program. We got Keith Currie, who is the president of the Canadian Federation of Agriculture. He's on the ground here in Alberta. Yes, we're talking to Keith. He is at that same conference that Tyler McCann was talking about, the Ag of the Americas, I believe it's called. It's in Olds. And Keith's going to talk about that meeting. But plus, too, wait a minute. Okay, so the ministers aren't going to the FPT, but the CFA is still having their FPT roundtable. So Keith's going to talk about that. And then we got Phil Boyd from the Turkey Farmers of Canada, who is also the chair of the Canadian Agricultural Hall of Fame. What a crop. They announced 6 new inductees into the Canadian Agricultural Hall of Fame yesterday. 6 major deserving people. And Phil's going to talk today with us about that list. And then we've got some time today also for some listener feedback, and we'll get to all of that. Well, G7, we've been talking about it underway. And you know what, I've been kind of floating, and I think there's a lot of people that are in this vicinity of, what does success look like at the G7? Normal? Okay. When I say normal, no real blow-ups, like just trying to keep everything even keel. Well, after what I think they call the summit dinner that happened on Monday night, President Trump pulled up shop and said, get the plane ready, flying back to D.C. And I know there's been a bunch of reactions to it. I guess I'm not one to I don't know the details. Kind of probably really classified information. A lot of people jumping to the fact it's Iran and Israel and things to be dealt with on that front. Unfortunately, President Trump will miss out on the discussion on Tuesday here today related to Russia and Ukraine. But all in all, it looked like a really good meeting between Carney and the president. And again, it just seems, and I don't want to jinx this, it just seems like on this file, whether it's just let's just say international matters. It's not just President Trump, just international matters. Carney's performing well. And I know that that's going to, for some of you in the audience, to be like, whoa, what about? Okay, I'm just saying in general. And maybe it's because the prior person, Prime Minister Trudeau, was so brutal at this stuff. So brutal. Brutal. It was bad. So low bar of improvement. Okay, so we've got that. But you got to say, for a guy that was saying during the election campaign, the relationship with the U.S. is dead, and we got to look elsewhere. He seems to have brought the relationship back to some form of normality. Now, pressure is on. They're talking about trying to have some sort of trade and security agreement together in the next 30 days, which is rather aggressive given all the things that are on the president's plate and working out details. What we do know, though, potentially, probably possible, if you look at some of the trade deals that, like, for example, the U.S.-UK deal that they're calling a deal, it's kind of a framework for what needs to be negotiated. So it's not this comprehensive deal like maybe we are a little bit more accustomed to. Whether that's good, good business by Carney or bad business. You know what? Anytime that we're moving forward and there's positive talk and it's not where we were back. Like, if you're against this, did you prefer where we were in February, where everything was about the 51st state and we weren't sure what exactly was on the mind of the president? This seems better. It does seem better. So let's again, I've said this before. Take the win, Canada. Take the win. Okay. Let's take a break. When we come back, let's talk, speaking of trade, let's talk trade with Stratus Ag Research right after this very quick break. Built on over 100 years of seed innovation and unwavering commitment to farmers, Pioneer 100 Series canola hybrids deliver a step change in yield performance and agronomic traits. This isn't just better canola, it's different canola. Pioneer 100 Series. Contact your local Pioneer sales representative or visit pioneer.com/100 series to learn more today.
If you only listen to RealAg Radio, you only get half the picture. For greater insight into the issues that affect farming, tune in to RealAgriculture.com. Crops, livestock, machinery, farm management and the markets, even food and travel. Real Agriculture Online digs deeper into the topics that affect the way you work and live. So get connected today. Read, watch, and listen to the people who know at RealAgriculture.com.
Peter Johnson at Wheat Pete, RealAgriculture.com, and what an opportunity! Oh my gosh! You think you can't grow better wheat? You are absolutely wrong. We're going to show you how to strive for those record wheat yields that they get in the UK and in New Zealand. You can grow 150 bushel wheat. I'll show you how.
Catch Wheat Pete's Word every Wednesday on RealAgriculture.com or download the podcast on iTunes or Spotify. Hey, time is running out to register for the 2025 Seeds Canada Annual Conference. It's happening July 7th through the 9th at the Hilton Quebec in Quebec City. For insightful speakers, insights into the latest industry trends, regulatory changes, and technological advancements that are shaping the future of the seed sector in Canada. You can register today at seeds-canada.ca/annual conference. Okay, obviously, a lot of topics related to trade and agriculture. And more importantly, we're going to dig now into maybe how is it impacting the outlook that farmers have and what are farmers' opinions of it on both sides of the border, like we do like to do here at RealAg Radio. Joining us right now is Mike Weddel. He is the president of Stratus Ag Research based out of Guelph, Ontario, just outside Guelph, Ontario. Hey, Mike, how are we doing?
Good, Shaun. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Okay, so tell us about, I guess, how many farmers in Canada and the U.S.?
Yeah, so what we did, Shaun, was last winter, we polled farmers in both countries, about 1,000 farmers in Canada and 800 farmers in the U.S. And we asked them to tell us how concerned they were about various topics that we put in front of them. So this was done online, and so they let us know what were the things that they're most concerned about.
Mm. Was trade kind of top of that list?
It wasn't actually at the top. Not surprisingly, rising costs of production was the number one issue for both Canadian and U.S. farmers. But concerns about trade and trade barriers was one of those really top concerns. And I think it's important to keep in mind the timing of this. So this was feedback or input from farmers in late January into the first week of February.
Yep.
And
rough time. That's a very rough time.
And just as I remember, all this stuff started to happen in early February, where we had tariffs announced, and then we had them paused for 30 days. And then we had tariffs on canola that China imposed on canola that came later in March. So this information was mostly before most of the trade issues started to really develop. Now, I think maybe we had some warning that things were like that were going to happen, but this was ahead of that period.
So what in particular are they concerned about when it comes to trade?
Well, I think that farmers recognize the importance of export markets, and so they're just very concerned about what kind of impact will this have, and how will it change the purchasing behavior of different countries when tariffs are imposed, and there's certainly that concern that they will end up being disadvantaged.
Some of the stuff that we've looked at here at Real Agriculture is Canadian farmers are worried about trade with the U.S., but U.S. farmers are more worried about Brazil and China and other countries like that, not necessarily Canada. Did you find that?
We didn't look for that exactly, no. So that's not something that came up directly within what we did.
Okay.
So just to position it a little bit, one of the things that we did see that was a little bit different between Canada and the U.S. is the level of concern about trade barriers at that time. So Canadian farmers were more concerned than U.S. farmers as of the end of January. We had 80% of Canadian farmers who were concerned and 50% who were very concerned about trade. It was a little bit lower than that in the U.S.
Okay. One of the things I've seen in some of Purdue's work with the Ag Barometer is that they looked, they had asked the question May of 2025 and compared to December of 2020 in terms of, is free trade good for the industry? And although, the most farmers still believe, yes, that is the case, either very much so or somewhat so, that amount is declining. It's being chipped away at. There's more farmers that are in those not really categories. I'm not too sure about this, and I'm kind of paraphrasing the research, so I apologize to our friends at Purdue, but that the positivity around free trade is still the majority, but it's being chipped away at, probably over the course of time. We've heard out of, now we're into the second Trump administration. Even the Democrats have not exactly been pro-trade. It's going to have an impact on people's outlook is kind of how I would view that. What would you think about that?
Well, first of all, we don't have anything to compare against, so I can't speak to whether it's changed or not. What I can say is that in the U.S., just like it seems like in everything else, there's this real polarization of views. So we've got one group of farmers who are saying, yes, we know it's going to hurt, but we think it's important to use tariffs in order to negotiate better trade deals that we've been taken advantage of too long, that we need to stand up for ourselves and negotiate better deals. But almost as many say, look, this is not the way to go. Free trade is the way to go, and that we're only going to hurt ourselves in the long run through the use of these tariffs. So it's kind of a mix like that, where it seems everything we ask in this area in the U.S., it's kind of like one group says this and then the other group says that. It's very polarized, as I said.
Yeah, you know, we have that bell curve, right? And you got the tails, and then the mass in the middle. It seems like on some of these topics that bell curve gets a little bit squished in the middle, and it pushes the toothpaste to the outside of the tube.
Yeah, yes, that's right.
Yeah, good way to look at it. Was there anything that surprised you in what you saw in this data that maybe sort of, well, that's actually kind of fascinating?
Well, what we did after we did this larger survey in the end of January is in early April, we went back and we posed one question, an open-end question to farmers in both the US and in Canada. And we asked them, when it comes to trade barriers and tariffs, what's the one message that you would like to convey to your elected officials or your government officials? And so we heard from them and we took a look at what they had to say. And I don't know if it's surprising or not, but with the Canadian farmer, the top thing, the most common thing that they had to say is that we wish our government would make agriculture a higher priority. They feel that they're not paying attention to, or they're getting shortchanged when it comes to government policy, is a feeling that a lot of farmers have expressed. That was the number one message that they wanted to get across.
What did U.S. farmers say?
Well, the U.S. farmers, that wasn't as high on their list. The number one message is we think you got to go with these tariffs and try to negotiate a better deal for the U.S. It's important to get our trade balance in order. So that was the number one thing, is we're kind of behind you. We don't really like it, but we're behind you and something that the country's got to do.
Yeah, and that speaks to what we've heard from a lot of farm groups that, on different occasions where we've done interviews, with the common phrase that is used is, hey, you know what, we're concerned about the tariffs. We understand that there's some negotiating happening here, and we're going to give the president some runway on this. The question is, how long of a runway? Is it a 172 or is it a Gulf Stream? That's still, the future will determine that. And for Canadian farmers, the response you got there, that's not just on trade, that's on just agriculture in general not being paid attention to, correct?
Yes, that's right. That's sort of a general feeling. And then the second thing that farmers wanted to convey, a message that they wanted to convey, is, look, we can't rely on the U.S. anymore. We have to develop trade with other countries. And so that was their second message is, let's make sure that we're doing everything we can to develop trade outside of the U.S., including with China. Yeah. So there were a lot of comments like now's a great time to go after the Chinese market when the U.S. is having such a confrontational relationship there.
Yeah, though it's the numbers, it's going to take a lot of Chinese buying to make up that. It's like $600 billion compared to 38. It's a big gap.
Big gap. Yeah.
Big gap.
Enormous.
Hey, Mike, thanks so much for joining us here today. I do appreciate it. All the best to you, and look forward to our next chat.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Hey, great stuff. Great stuff. Hey, from nutrient management to the latest weather, market, and ag trends, the Dirt and Economics podcast is your place for farm smart topics to boost your profitability. Join Mike Howell on season 3 of the Dirt podcast, available now at nutrient-economicswithak.com. More coming up here on RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, right after this quick break.
Hi, I'm Bernard Tobin, host of the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com. Throughout the year, on the Soybean School, we'll bring you timely agronomic video content from planting to harvest, from the latest agronomic research to the latest in production technology. Check out our massive video library on YouTube, RealAgriculture.com, or download the audio podcast versions wherever you get your podcasts. The Soybean School is brought to you by Mazix Seeds and Lalamon Plant Care.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is a video series that showcases the latest in canola research and production agronomy. Learn from some of the best at your own pace through quick and timely producer-focused videos available on our YouTube channel. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is the quickest way to keep up to date on all the latest in canola production. Boost your canola IQ with the Canola School, brought to you by BASF, and visit canolaschool.com.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio. Hey, Co-op Ag Zone Bin Logic is the ultimate tool for ensuring the success of your grain operation. Simple, scalable, solar-powered, and cost-effective. Bin Logic allows you to monitor your bins from anywhere. Contact your co-op equipment team member to learn more. And our next guest is away from the farm, so he could use some. He should have Bin Logic while he's in Kananaskis. He could be monitoring what's happening with his bins back in Ontario. Joining us right now is the president of the Canadian Federation of Agriculture. It is Mr. Keith Currie. Keith, jeepers. How are we doing?
We're doing good. Shaun. It's good to be in Alberta and good to be at Olds College. It's been quite a few years since I've been here, so it's great to come back to a great agriculture institution to attend a conference.
Great. So you're not in Kananaskis in the G7.
No, they were very specific about who could and could not come in, and as you're well aware of, there's limited access in and out of Kananaskis, so they were able to control that pretty good. So we couldn't even go in and crash the party, so to speak.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay, so this Tyler McCann from Cappy, he was talking about this on Friday's show. This meeting of the Americas. So before we get to the FPT discussion, that was the reason for this interview. How's the conference been there in Olds?
It's great. It's for those not familiar with the organization IECA, that is the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation in Agriculture, and it's a 83-year-old organization that started back in 1942 or 3, which really focuses on agriculture in the Americas. And all the American countries are members of this organization, and they're doing some really good work on advancing agriculture, not only within the Americas, obviously, but really doing a big push on getting the Americas in a better position on the trade world scene. And so we're encouraged by that. And we have reps from right across all the Americas here. Some great information on what's going on all over the place, including I just saw a presentation from Brazil and how advanced they are in their agriculture, and especially on the technology side. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, but on the trade front, if you think about Brazil and Argentina versus the U.S., different sides of the equation when it comes to China.
Big time, and you could even argue to a certain extent even different sides of the fence from Central America. But there's a common theme of being Latin that's drawing them together, and certainly I think on the global scale of things, the Americas in particular, North America and Central America, I think by bonding together we can be much stronger going forward on that.
Keith, I got to ask you about the FPT. It's been pushed off till the fall for the ministers. Now, CFA has traditionally had some panels and a day of events or discussions around that FPT meeting. My understanding is that CFA is going to go ahead with that agenda this year, even though the first ministers are not going to be there?
Yeah, that's correct. And look, we completely respect the decision that the ministers made, given the conditions that are going on across the northern part of the prairies with the wildfires. And so we certainly understand the optics of this and why they made the decision. But CFA always holds their summer board meeting in conjunction with the FPTs, and along with that, we always host a roundtable with the ministers for an afternoon and get into some good discussion. And this year we decided to change it up. Instead of having a rectangle form focus where the ministers and provincial general farmer organizations have a conversation. We switched it up to have more of a roundtable discussion. Our plan was to have a minister at each table, but industry representatives and some of our membership there, but the industry surrounding the tables as well, to hear the conversations on a myriad of different topics so that the ministers could have input from their perspective. And then at the end of it all, the tables all report back on what they talked about and what they heard, and maybe some suggestions on how we move forward as far as policy influence and regulatory framework influence as well.
Okay, so I guess what was your position on? You said it was understandable the ministers canceled. The big push for the Manitoba government apparently to put this off due to the wildfires. We talked about this on Friday's show. I was kind of in the position like, I don't know, just have it. Like, there's other places to even have it. Like, why does it have to be in Winnipeg? Just because Manitoba's the host, but not everybody agreed with me. I guess, do you see an issue with putting the First Minister's part of this meeting off till fall?
Well, obviously, we're disappointed that they're not going to be there, given this is probably the single biggest agriculture event of the year, with the entire industry and agri-food industry in attendance. So they're shoulder to shoulder with the respective first agriculture ministers across the country, and can have those conversations on whatever subject matter they want to. It's not just as simple as say just cancel it or move it. We have contracts in place with the hotels. People have booked flights already that may or may not be able to get refunds on. We have a tremendous amount of sponsorship dollars involved, corporate sponsors, and so. I in some ways, part of me is saying, why couldn't you wait a little closer to the deadline if you really need to cancel or not? But that's not my call to make. That's up to the ministers to make that call, whether they're comfortable in coming. I think from an optics standpoint per se, we've been in touch with the hotel, for example, to make sure that we're not imposing on any potential rooms that might be available for those that are displaced because of the fires. And they assured us that there's lots of hotel space available, and that's not an issue. So we're happy about that, because if that becomes the case, then we'll have to rethink this as we get closer.
But that's good on you and responsible to do that. But that doesn't that the answer you got doesn't mesh with what the reason why the ministers were canceling or pushing the meeting back in the first place is. I'm not quite sure what's at work here, but
yeah, I'm not either. If you want to know the honest truth, I mean, whether there's something more political behind it, or whether there's a few people just uncomfortable about it. To the best of my knowledge, and I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but I don't think Premier Canoe was the one that was leading the charge here, but I don't know that for sure. But at the end of the day, they made the decision. They are planning on getting back together, gathering later this year, whenever that is, I'm not sure. So that's where this policy aspect of what we're doing at the conference, at the meetings, is important, so that we can then go to the FPTs, to the ministers, and say, look, here's what agriculture is saying. Here's what we need. Here's what we're looking from you. So that part's still going to be very valuable and productive.
Hey, Keith. So typically at this meeting, business risk management is like really top of the priority list. What are the key things that need to be discussed right now? What are, and I know there's a long list, okay, but are there 2 or 3 priority items that this new Minister McDonald, is going to have to tackle with the other First Ministers?
Well, I wish I could answer that question, Shaun, because as you know, ministers across the country have different priorities. But, given the Prime Minister's focus on economics in particular, I think we can weave that into much of what we're looking at with respect to competitiveness of Canadian producers. Certainly not just producers, but the entire value chain. How do we be competitive on an international market? And that might mean, how do we get better infrastructure inputs that we need, input regulations, whether that's fertilizer, whether that's other inputs, whether that means PMRA gets a slap and gets better on how we handle our crop protection products, whether CFIA does a better job on everything else that they control. those kinds of things. How do we build resilience into our industry? We've talked a lot about business risk management over the years, and I think there's starting to be some fatigue around those conversations.
No, you're telling me, Keith. Oh.
Not that it's not important, but the reality is when it comes to risk management, under the current SCAP, we have to have the provinces on board with it. And realistically, the money involved in the SCAP isn't going to cut it what we need big time for business risk management and some of the program design. And we're coming up to the beginning of discussions for the next program. So perhaps we can have input then, but, and where is the future of farm finance? I think that's a really key one that we need to focus on. How do we create the competitive environment, the investment environment, so we get that third-party capital venture into Canada, in particular for the value-add side, the processing, manufacturing side.
Keith, in April, Real Agri Studies, the market research arm of Real Agriculture, we asked farmers about a number of different policies that are important to them. And I'll tell you, when we do some of the gap analysis and when we look at, okay, here's what farmers think needs to be the priority, access to credit and financing was in the top 4. So there's data to support what you're saying there.
Oh, for sure. And even with respect to business risk management, I mean, things like crop insurance or livestock insurance or insurance in general, do we need to take a hard look at other jurisdictions and how they handle that from a private side of things? And can it be better? Can we have better coverage? Can we have better rates? That kind of stuff I think is really important. And if we can find some of those solutions, maybe that takes some of the onus off the provinces and the federal government. And maybe those dollars can be shifted into better innovative programming that we can have right across the value chain, including at the producer level. So there's lots of options there that we can look at. And I think that's kind of what we want to talk about in a couple of weeks in Winnipeg is what are those things that we can put forward to the Ag First Ministers that they can use and run with.
Yeah, great stuff. We've been talking to the president of the Canadian Federation of Agriculture. It is Keith Currie. He also has I think one of the sharpest sports coats that we've seen on this show in the last couple of weeks. Keith, that's a sharp looking jacket.
Well, thank you. I like that. I got my CFA pin, but I'm also promoting NCIF, who we are going to make an announcement about in Winnipeg. So I hope you're there to take that on, Shaun. It's going to be an important announcement of a collaboration with a great group of people over there at NCIF.
Cool stuff. Keith, all the best to you. Enjoy Olds. By the way, great. There's a great brewery right on campus there.
I'm in my.
You're aware? Are you aware of this already?
Right now, I'm going to tour through there before I go back to the conference, just in case.
Smart man, that Keith Currie. Smart man. Okay, we'll be right back on RealAg Radio, Roll Radio 147, right after this. I get to spend every day talking to farmers in the ag industry through RealAgriculture.com and RealAg Radio. But nothing is more fun than speaking to an audience live and in person. If you're planning an ag event, book a Real Agriculture speaker to make it a successful and memorable experience. Email shaney@realagriculture.com and you can book myself or any other Real Ag personality to speak at your event. Bring your audience all the fun, insight, and energy of Real Agriculture.
It's summertime, and you've got a lot of important decisions to make when it comes to your corn crop. Let the Corn School on RealAgriculture.com help guide you through those big decisions with input from leading experts in the field. If it's spray timing, disease identification, or any other field issue, the Corn School's got you covered. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Pride Seeds.
And welcome back to Real Ag Radio here on Roll Radio 147, Sirius XM. Well, hey, great news. We have the announcement by the Canadian Agricultural Hall of Fame, this year's inductees. There's a class of 6, and I'll tell you, awesome list of people that have contributed in epic manners in their own way to the Canadian agricultural industry. Joining us here to talk about the Hall of Fame and how this list came to be, it is Phil Boyd. He is the chair of the Canadian Agricultural Hall of Fame, as well as with the Turkey Farmers of Canada. Hey, Phil, how are we doing?
I'm good, Shaun. Thanks so much for reaching out and engaging in the conversation about the Hall of Fame. I really appreciate it on behalf of the board and on behalf of the inductees as well.
Hey, well, easy to do from my end. So, give us some background on the Hall of Fame. How long has it been around, and talk about it.
Yeah, so the Hall of Fame was actually came into place in 1960. So it's been around a considerable period of time. We're talking 65 years. There's well over 200 inductees in the Hall of Fame over that time. I think probably even north of 250, and then with our 6 additions this year. So it's quite a gallery as you walk through there and see the portraits of these folks, see what they've contributed to Canadian agriculture, to, provincially, nationally, internationally, to their local communities. Really highlights some of the work of pioneers in their field. It highlights the contribution of Canadian agriculture and agri-food to the fabric of Canada, to the economy. And really, it's just a salute to the people that have made such a huge impact on the sector, as you said, in their own way, from their own unique positions and what they were able to do with the resources that they had, with their ingenuity, with their inventiveness, and just with their forward thinking. So this is all good news. To your earlier point, right? This is an easy conversation to have when we're honoring these folks. And it, honestly, I find it a bit emotional too, to be able to recognize these folks and understand what they mean for day-to-day life for Canadians generally. It's a lot of remarkable stories in that Hall of Fame.
And we know the Football Hall of Fame's in Canada, Ohio. We know the Cooperstown, of course, is the Baseball Hall of Fame. Toronto, the Hockey Hall of Fame. Where is the Canadian Agricultural Hall of Fame?
So the Canadian Ag Hall of Fame Portrait Gallery is housed at the Royal Winter Fair on the exhibition grounds in Toronto. But the last several years, the Hall has made a decision to move the induction ceremony across the country. So we were in Toronto last year. We were in Charlottetown the year before that. It's been in Winnipeg. It's been in Quebec City. And this year, we're thrilled to be in BC. For the first time, we'll be holding the induction gala in Victoria. So we're pretty stoked about that. And I think the benefit that the board would agree with is moving this induction ceremony across the country has created a whole bunch more awareness of the Hall of Fame and what it stands for. It's attracted nominees from various parts of the country every year. So this year, we have six inductees from 5 different provinces. And so this is really a really interesting comment on the breadth and depth of the reach of these folks, of how important Canadian ag is right coast to coast. So yeah, that's where it's housed. We have a series of banners that we set up with different inductees on it at each induction ceremony, so that that taste of history shows up as well, and just brings a sense, a greater sense of honor to the folks, a greater sense of just kind of the awesome nature of the hall and what it stands for, and it's a thrill to be a part of this. It really is.
Yeah, and the last couple of years, I've interviewed in more long form all of the inductees, and man, it's inspirational to talk to them. It's hear some of the stories, and there's always like the outcome and what you accomplish, but I really like to find out too, like what got you there, like what did that path look like? And it's in some cases it's like, listen, I knew from the age of 10 I wanted to be a forage breeder. I'm not sure if there's a lot of 10-year-olds dreaming of being forage breeders, but you know what I mean. And there's some people, it's like, well, I actually did this, and then I became, all of a sudden I was 35 and had this opportunity, and look at me now. So let's go through the list. Who are this year's 6 inductees into the Canadian Agricultural Hall of Fame?
If I could just add one point there, I think what has struck me over the various induction galas that I've been involved with, to a person, the inductees are humbled by the honor, quietly proud of what they've been able to accomplish, and importantly, acknowledge the team around them that has helped them get there. And I think, it just, again, it goes to the character of these folks and their stick-to-itiveness and their insights. So this year, unfortunately, Joe Hudson, who was a really significant change agent in the Canadian ag industry, passed away maybe a little over a year and a half ago. And so his family will be there to accept on his behalf. He was a national person of impact in the egg sector. He was awarded an American recognition during his career, and he's been certainly an innovator in the egg sector. Dennis Latecraft, of course, is virtually a household name across Canadian agriculture. A lifetime commitment to the cattle industry in Canada. He's been really a significant player on numbers of things. Whether it was the BSE, he was heavily involved in working through that crisis in the industry. He's been around the Sustainable Beef Roundtable. He's been effective internationally for the cattle producers in the country. And so he's 40 years or so in the cattle business.
Well, and may have more Air Canada air miles than anybody else I know.
Yes, he told me once, and clearly he didn't spend enough time at home. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I've got a few, but nothing near Dennis. Yeah,
Dennis is one of those guys that's going super elite by the end of January.
Exactly. He's a going concern and well-deserved recognition to bring Dennis into the Hall of Fame as well. Dr. Peter Sikkim, a weed scientist. I don't know if he was planning to be a weed scientist when he was 10 years old or not, but he certainly had a major impact in terms of improving crop yields, pioneer work on herbicide-resistant weeds in corn, soybeans, grains, edible beans. Yeah. The comment, I think, that loomed large, it's in the press release, he was committed to addressing real-world challenges and knew the value of his research was measured by the changes made in on-farm weed management practices. So again, pioneer in his field, long-term and lasting impact on the work he's done. And so, we're thrilled to have him brought into the hall. And then Dory Ginger Beauchemin. She's a public servant in Manitoba for her career. Really highly involved, sleeves rolled up kind of bureaucrat, served various ministers of agriculture, has had a major impact on 4-H Canada as we read through her work. She helped establish a research chair in sustainable protein at the University of Manitoba. She served with Farmers Abroad Canada, and she's continuing to work on Canada's first Agri-Food Sustainability Index. And so, again, a hardworking public servant deserving of induction into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I have a story. I interviewed her one time at a conference, and there's lots of interviews, and some stuff sticks with you, some stuff doesn't. I remember her very distinctly when Dory said, one of the best characteristics a person can have is curiosity. Mm-hmm. I always thought that was just so true.
Yeah, fair point. And I think she lived that.
Yep.
And so again, just thrilled to have her invited into the Hall of Fame. John Anderson, out of British Columbia, he launched a food retail business, fresh produce global food retail business. Started in the warehouse, became CEO, and just really worked hard to advance sustainable agriculture, support local agriculture communities, kept championing the Canadian, success in the Canadian agri and agri-food industry, has really made an indelible mark on that business. And again, another really worthy inductee, and again, different than the others, different field of endeavor, but there we are. That's the breadth of our sector, right?
Yeah.
And then finally, Monsieur Desroches from Solio, cooperative. He built the company substantially. He's been, I think, a 40-year career there. Has made a powerful impact across the organization with different strategic mergers, collaborations with universities. Really an important pillar of that organization. Has built an excellent team around him, recognizes that his team is superb, and of course, great leaders build great teams. So I think that's the 6 for this year. And man, there's, again, every one of them is a great story. Every one of them is a profound contributor to the health of the sector, the health of their organizations, the health of the people around them in terms of what they've been able to accomplish. And so again, I can get emotional about this, and I'm just on the delivery end. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just to have people work that career, whatever shape it took, and to be recognized. It's awesome. Just awesome.
Yeah. Very well put. We've been talking to Phil Boyd. He is the chair of the Canadian Agricultural Hall of Fame as well. He is with Turkey Farmers of Canada. Phil, thanks a lot for sharing these stories, and congratulations on a great list, and keep up the great work there at the Hall of Fame.
So thanks so much, Shaun, for giving us the chance to talk about it on your show. We really do appreciate that. And, you'd be more than welcome to attend our ceremony in Victoria on Saturday, November 8th. It'd be lovely to see you there.
Oh, that would be a lot of fun. I like Victoria. Good weather too in November as we start to settle in for some Canadian winter.
There's always something. Anyway, all the very best, Shaun. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Okay, we'll be right back on RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, right after this.
I'm Lindsay Smith from RealAgriculture.com. Join me Monday nights for The Agronomists, a 1-hour live and interactive show broadcast across YouTube, Facebook, and X. Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host expert agronomists from all over the country to give you answers to some of the toughest agronomic questions. Join us live or catch the replay Tuesday morning. That's The Agronomists with me, Lindsay Smith, Monday nights live at 8 p.m. Eastern.
How's your seed quality? What should you treat with? What about herbicide carryover and environmental concerns? Spring is here, and you've got a lot of things to think about in regards to your pulse crop. The Pulse School on Real Agriculture has information and advice for all these questions and more to help you navigate this season. Brought to you by BASF. Pulse School episodes are available at pulseschool.com, realagriculture.com, or as a podcast on your favorite streaming service. Download the latest episode today.
Hey, with volatile markets and rising costs, now's your chance to be a part of the solution. It's time to secure your future with Genesis Fertilizers. Gain control and ensure access to locally produced nitrogen. Act now to protect your farm's future for generations. Visit genesisfertilizers.com to learn more. Well, let's get into some of your feedback. What do you think? And I'm sure maybe that'll spur a little bit more from the rest of the audience as well in terms of, well, listen here, if that's what one person thinks, let me tell you how I feel. That's I love that kind of stuff. Don't always have to agree or disagree. Let's get to thought here this is from Paul. Paul's from Ontario. And he heard the conversation I had last week with Jim Wiesmeyer. Now he says, I always like the current American government and the analysts' viewpoints. If you say it often enough, it must be true. Americans think everyone else in the world uses non-tariff trade barriers while they are pretty good at them on their own. In another life, I was involved in the fruit and veg industry, and we had a healthy discussion about this at the boardroom table. So 3 examples which I believe are still current 25 years later. MRLs on fruit and vegetables. Canada has had an MRL of very low ppb or ppm on pesticides that are registered in other countries, but not in Canada. USA has had MRLs of 0 on pesticides that are not registered in USA. While Canada and the US try to harmonize registrations, there are limited products that fall into that situation. 2, maybe not a true non-tariff barrier, but irrigation is a big deal between USA and Canada. While most irrigation products for the last 100 years in U.S. are subsidized as they are all built and maintained by the Army Engineer Corps, just Google Army Engineers Corps irrigation projects. If all irrigation projects in the U.S. are subsidized on many crops, that gives an advantage in the marketplace over non-subsidized irrigation in Canada. And 3, minimum wage and legal versus illegal workers, which USA may lose that advantage pretty soon, depending on what happens with immigration policy. Hey, appreciate it. Paul finished with, trade is all negotiable, but it is good to know what a level playing field is. Hey, yeah, well put. And honestly, this is what trade negotiators figure out. And like, free trade is not perfect trade. And it seems like the push has been to some sort of more fair trade. And the problem with fair is it's not equal. We know this from some of our succession talks. Fair is not equal and equal is not fair. It's a negotiation. It's trying to get to where do both sides feel this is a deal that they can live with? Did they get everything they wanted? No. Did they get what they needed? And they can say, hey, this is a good thing for us. Yes. And stuff like that. So, yeah, I appreciate the email, Paul. I think everybody in the audience would agree, whether it's the audience in Canada or the U.S., all of us complain about the non-tariff trade barriers of other countries, but we don't necessarily always recognize our own. And I think that's just Canada fits into that as well. So appreciate the email. Got a call to the RealAg feedback line. Yes, indeed. Here is a call from Currie, who farms in Saskatchewan.
Oh, Shaun, Currie calling again. Another comment about what Lindsay said, just regarding the sort of the attitude, I guess, of farmers generally on renewable fuels and biodiesel and such. And I think it's partly one of apprehension a bit that the government policies are again involved in directing markets, basically, and so there's kind of a reluctance, perhaps, or an uneasiness about that, and I think justifiably so, because policies can and do change. And back to the impact of the Chinese tariffs on canola price. I mean, it's a policy that comes in and or leaves at some point, and it messes with farmers' ability to read the market going forward. And so I guess the other thought about that one too is that there was a real fear at the time that, yes, canola oil and meal were affected, but what about canola seed? Was there a possibility that canola seed could have been included in that tariff policy, and what would the impact of that be? And so renewable fuels, some apprehension, some uneasiness, reluctance almost to have that as part of the market, even though that's reality and has been for a long time, really, in terms of the U.S. policy in particular, and the ethanol policy in Canada as well. So anyway, just some random thoughts about.
Hey, appreciate that, Currie. Awesome stuff. I know you listen all the time. Thank you so much for sending in your feedback there on the RealAg feedback line. That number is 855-776-6147. And I think, Currie honestly sums up what I hear from that apprehension side of the thing. If there are, I think it's what's held back the opinion and the sentiment around biofuels in Canada. Is this, is this a bad thing long term in the interference in the market? But I think he's describing that real. I hear that all the time. We're getting to breaking down those policy impacts and trying to get a better understanding on the regionality on how people feel about something like biofuels from an age perspective, farm size perspective. And we'll definitely be bringing that to you here on Real Agriculture, but appreciate Currie for checking in on that. We also have talked recently, I think we played the discussion with Adam Dick from Warburton's here on the show, where Warburton's put a very significant amount of money $650,000 into the GATE project that Cereals Canada is fundraising around for this new building and facility. And got an email here from Jerry, who says, hey, the GATE project is basically a new building in downtown Winnipeg on property owned by Richardson. Very little equipment is being upgraded. Not a fan of this project. And yeah, there's people definitely in Jerry's camp. I heard other feedback like that as well. Now, on any of these topics, like you can see, we had with 4 different topics here across 3 different pieces of feedback. You are more than welcome to provide your thoughts as well. See how easy that was? Very simple. Very simple. My email address is shaney@realagriculture.com, and the RealAg feedback line is 855-776-6147. Try to reply to as many as I possibly can, and I do appreciate the audience participating in all of this. And hey, maybe you got some thoughts on Carney and how he's handling the what I would call the Trump file. And hey, for the American listeners, I'd love to hear from you on this. Does your view of Canada change? Has it changed with Prime Minister Mark Carney? I know you're not following Canadian politics as closely as you could be. That's okay. We'll forgive you in Canada. But here's the reality. I'm curious on your perception. And that perception may be through the lens of, hey, President Trump just hasn't blown up about it. But something changed after the Canadian election, whether that's are Carney and Trump chummier than maybe people expected or maybe people thought? Is there some sort of history there between the two of them? I find it interesting that Trump, even yesterday in the press conference, continued to call him Mark. There's a connection there. He doesn't do that with everybody. Notice these little things. And I think it's a positive for if you're in favor of better Canada-U.S. trade relations and trying to work together and trying to really combat some of those nefarious characters that are out there in the market that agriculture producers and the industry is competing with on a daily basis, then I think you're feeling a little bit better than you were maybe going back to end of January, beginning of February. But I want your thoughts too, America, and across Canada, of course, as well. Again, the email address, shaney@realagriculture.com. Okay, hey, tomorrow on the show, we got a good one. Here's who's lined up here so far. We got Jody Lawrence talking about the markets first. We've got Chris Vervey from COPA talking about some of these biofuel regs and how does canola fit into what we heard. There's talk about maybe Canadian canola qualifying as domestic feedstock, but at half the RIN value. What does that mean for the price of canola and maybe some of your basis? And we're also going to have Senator Black on as well. So we got a full slate tomorrow. That's going to be a lot of fun. Hey, thanks everybody for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio, and we will chat again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.